And there will still be people joining us. We're also waiting for Tricia to join us as well, because otherwise people will be coming from previous sessions and other meetings, etc. So welcome everybody. This session for the Social Care Futures Online Festival is an Equal Social Care Future. I'm Ian McCreath. I work for Alzheimer's Society, Personalisation Lead, and I'm just hosting today and be introducing presentations from Clinton and Tricia, as well as an open discussion. I'll make a start, although people will still be joining us, just take you through the instructions and rules for the day, for the session, sorry. I know some of you may have already seen these because you've been to previous sessions, but some of us, this will be the first one. So I'll just see the screen, there we go. So if you know someone who's trying to get into this session and can't, we will try and keep an eye on the chat and also the waiting room, but also if you could let people know to call Wendy, and the telephone number's up on the screen now, as she will be able to then get in touch and help them out. And just a reminder that we are recording all sessions apart from the breakout rooms. So what you say will be recorded, but that's really so that we can share and get the good stuff and the good content out as widely as possible post-event. We know that it can be hard to get your voice heard, particularly in a video session. So if you want to say something, then we've asked people to have something yellow, whether it's a yellow card, a banana or rubber duck, or anything yellow. If you don't have anything yellow to hand, then don't worry, just wave or make it known in some other way. And we'll try and keep tabs on everybody's screen and give as many people as possible a chance to speak. The session will be presentations from Clinton and Tricia, and there will be an open opportunity for discussion later. So if you have something to say or an idea whilst Clinton or Tricia are speaking, then if we could ask you to use the chat facility, and we will monitor that and come back to those, or make a note on a bit of paper so that when it goes to open discussion, you'll have your question that came to mind there in front of you. We will be keeping to time, having started just slightly late, but we will be finishing on time because it will affect other events in the festival. It's impossible to cover everything we need to cover on this topic in a 1 hour session. So this is very much the start of what we hope would be a longer term discussion and piece of work. But we will try and get to as many people's views and contributions as possible. Please stay on mute if you're not speaking. I can't hear any feedback or any background noise, so I think everyone's doing really well on that at the minute. If you're on mute at the start, but you do want to contribute when it's open discussion, then if you can just click on the unmute button, then we will be able to hear you. If you'd like to keep your video on, that's great, because it's great to see who we're speaking to and put a face to names and voices. But if you're not comfortable with that, or if you want to have a drink or a snack, given that it's a lunchtime session, and then do feel free to turn your video off as well, of course. You have a choice of who to see. You can either see the main speaker, or you could have a view of everybody who's speaking, and you can change that through the gallery view in the top corner. At the moment, we're sharing a screen, so for the majority of you, that is what you'll be seeing at the minute, and there'll be a limited number of people along the sidebar that you'll also be able to see. If you don't want that distraction, then you can minimise that as well. Please do use the chat for questions and comments. As I say, it's likely that there will be more things to be said and more people want to say something, then there'll be time and space in this hour to get everybody's views heard. But we will record the session, but we also will capture everything that's in there in chat. So you have a question, if you have a comment that you've heard, or you have a resource or a web link that you want to share with everybody, then we do really strongly encourage you to use that chat facility. Finally, if you have problems with sound, please check your sound settings. You can do that at the top of your screen under preferences. For those using headphones, you may need to change your default setting, which is likely to be the computer speakers. So if that's proving a problem, then have a look at ZMUS and go for preferences. So that's really the instructions and the rules for the session. The most important thing really is that we listen and consider everybody's view, share, learn, contribute your own perspective and your own experience, because that's how we all learn, to see things clearer and a bigger picture. We want everybody to feel comfortable enough to engage and enjoy. So please do get involved. So this session is addressing issues of inequality, in particular lack of people participation in decision making, shaping resources, maintaining and developing relationships, but also access to information. And that's the first spelling mistake you may find many as we go through. The most marginalised are often furthest away from these, and it's time now for us to intentionally change this situation. But what are the steps that need to be taken? So without further ado, I shall hand you over to Clinton Farquharson, sorry, Clinton, a personal perspective on the issues.
Thanks, Ian. I've been called worse, so don't worry about it. Welcome to you all and to our session, as Ian has described, an equal social care future. And my name is Clinton Ferguson. The roles I include Think Local, Act Personal, and chair and a member of the Social Care Future Inquiry. I'm here, hopefully, with another colleague, Tricia Pereira, who's the co-chair of the Black and Asian Minority Ethnic Communities Advisory Group at the Department of Health and Social Care. And as Ian has talked about and introduced, and Ian being the personalisation lead and policy team at Alzheimer's Society and Dementia Change Action Network. DCAN, have I got that right?
That's right, yeah. Thanks, Clinton.
But I want to, and I should stress that these are my personal views, not those of the organisation. And COVID has laid bare race inequality in social care as well as wider society, and especially structural racism has led to worse COVID impact on Black and Asian and minority ethnic groups. And I don't know if anyone has seen the report that Dame Doreen Lawrence concluded, the review commissioned by the Labour Party, and as a Labour peer said, minority ethnic people had been overexposed, underprotected, stigmatised and overlooked. This has been a generation in the making. The impact of COVID is not random, but foreseeable and inevitable, and the consequences of decades. So if a better social care future is to include everyone equally and dealing with inequalities for those working in it and those people who use care and support, what are the issues we need to attend to? Are there any glimpses of good outcomes out there for people? And what can we all do, including ensuring diversity in our movement? And I was involved in last conversation this morning, and it was really interesting to me. And that what struck me was, I think I need to press harder on just how, when we talk and use the phrase inclusive local community groups, what does that look like? How does disabled people and other marginalised groups not only benefit, that we are not just beneficiaries, but as agents within our community to use our agency, choice and control and being involved, and also what I'm trying to look at is building on Black History Month, which was in October. It will be a discussion with partners, I think this is, across health and social care, and with colleagues from the Coalition for Personalised Care, we'll need to have this discussion. So for me, before we begin, I and many others have to recognise there has been positive developments on the quality, and have undoubtedly helped to create a more open road for an equal society to be and do the things that people want to do in their life. But at the same time, public services, resources and support that many require to take up these opportunities and to realise our potential have either not materialised and remain at odds with the goals, or have gone into decline. And I've had many conversations, many of us as people with lived experience of equality have been invited to look up at the stars, only to find the ground opening up beneath us as the pandemic has evidenced and wiped the foundation underneath us. And last week on Twitter, I replied to a comment in which the conversation was and discussion was about equality. And I've said it like many other people before me. If you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably on the menu. And so it's important that we acknowledge this and name it and actually do something about it. So I like to share my personal experience that has shaped my personal experience of lockdown in the pandemic. And I have to admit, it's been quite hard and an emotional roller coaster. And sadly, my best friend from school had contracted the virus, and he was rushed into intensive care onto a ventilator. And now he's on the long road to recovery. And I have to admit, when I heard about my best friend, I was angry. I was very angry that I couldn't visit him in hospital, and neither could his family. And the reasons why I was angry, because of my own experience of what happened to me in my life. My friend and my friends were there for me. I couldn't be there, for my friend in his hour of need, and that absolutely felt torturous. But my second experience, and I thought I would be able to share with you all, but I realised this is still quite raw and emotionally charged for me to talk about it. So I thought I'd be able to do it. But it was about my auntie who died in May with COVID-19, and I just think it's still too raw to open up that and share that personal story of my auntie dying. So you'll have to forgive me. So I would just like to say this is personal, today's conversation. And I'm not going to apologise for it being personal, but the discussion is so important to me. And if we want an equal social care future and personalised care, what's our commitment to it? And that's why I'm a passionate believer of social care future, which says to me, we all want to live in a place we call home, with the people and things we love, in communities where we look out for one another, doing the things that matter to us. And to me, that has massive implications. Like I say, what does inclusive communities look like or feel like? And I want people to, we bandy this word around being inclusive. And on the it's normally when we talk about inclusive, do people who look like us with lived experience, are they able to be empowered to deliver some of the resources and be involved in decision making, and also in having social networks of relationships and information that enables us to be part of the conversation. So for me, it's really important. So I want to hand over to Trish. If Trish is on the line, can anyone tell me if Trish is on the line?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, Clinton.
Oh.
I've been listening in intently.
Okay, hand over to you, and then so it's to you, Trish.
Hi, I hope everybody can see me okay. Yeah. My name's Trisha Pereira, and I'm a social worker. My current role is Head of Operations for London Borough of Merton. So I've been a social worker for many years, nearly 20 years, but I'm not just a social worker. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, and I'm also a carer. I'm a carer for my aunt who was diagnosed with early stages of dementia at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So like Clinton said, he said, and I think you apologised, and you shouldn't really apologise about this being a very personal session, because this pandemic is affecting all of us in our own ways, and this is a very personal session, and it's a very personal situation. Yesterday I was speaking at another event about leadership, and it was about inclusive and diverse leadership. And when we talked about inclusive leadership, we talked about people being represented across the board. So it wasn't just about race equality, but it was about people with all abilities, with all needs and with all wishes and desires being represented in our social care leadership. So first slide, please. If you can. You did change the slide and then it popped back to me. So, right, thank you. So the opening statement of yesterday's NCAS conference was from James Bullion, who's the ADASS president. And James and ADASS released this statement earlier this year, and I thought it was quite poignant for today's discussion. It was around CQC's review of the state of care, and each year the review concludes that we have that meaningful reform is long overdue. The efforts of those working in adult social care continue to go unrecognised. And until we have the commitment and funding to deliver a shared vision, the underlying story will not change. And that we as councils and people that work in councils are facing unprecedented demands and expectations. So he went on to talk about the need for strong vision and strong leadership in order that we can support people in the community who want just an equal life, just a life in general, a life that, another quote is, a life that's worth living, and a life supported by their families, and a life that they can support their family members. And that is the essence of social work and supporting people through social care. I'm very passionate about that. I was one of the co-authors of Strengths-Based Practice framework that was launched about a year or so ago, and that talks about supporting people in the community, but actually supporting people to realise their own ambitions and their own wants and needs. And as Clinton said, there's a whole host of people who are looking up at the stars. And how we capture people's views about their own lives and their own journeys and their own contributions that they want to make is fundamental to the way that we should be working within social work and social care. We should be human enablers. But the barriers that are in society, the systemic challenges, don't always allow us to work in that way. And I'm really pleased to be invited today, and I'm really proud to be part of a discussion with Social Care Future to just say, how do we need to take this a step further. How do we support people to realise their own life ambitions? What needs to change? What needs to happen? What can we do individually and what can we do collectively, those of us who are working in social care, to change the climate? Because, as James Bullion said, each year the review of the state of care concludes that meaningful reform is long overdue. We know that. This is a time, an opportunity to really action change. And I really want to be part of that change. And I want to hear from the people today, how can we move forward with this change in a practical sense, in a meaningful sense? So I was also proud to be part of the BAME advisory group to the social care task force looking at COVID. And we've had all the reports around inequalities. And what COVID has done is highlighted the years of inequalities that we knew about. And some of the recommendations that we put together for the BAME advisory group is, we recommended that people with lived experience that people with lived experience who are in receipt of social care, their support networks and people who work in social care are at the forefront of developing social care policy and guidance that affects the BAME communities and the individuals. And that we have close conversations, that we hear from the individuals directly who are being affected, and that is shaping the policy and the way that the pandemic, the support for people during this pandemic. We found that leaders, community leaders and individuals haven't been hard to reach. People often talk about hard to reach groups, but we found that people were not hard to reach and that they were very forthcoming. We held 2 engagement events and we had to hold them at short notice because of the pace of the work. And we had so many people attend those engagement events, those people who work in social care and those people who access support via social care. So there were carers, there were individuals, there were loved ones and family members who all shared their stories and their views, and that went into our recommendations. One of our other recommendations talked about the coordination of health and social care, that we need to work better together. We've had many years of talking about integration and how we work together to support individuals and families. But we need to recognise that sometimes it's not working as it should be. So we need that parity of social care, just as we have the highlight with our health colleagues, to share information, to share learning, to share best practice. And this is when James Bullion talks about strong vision and a strong leadership. And I just wanted to conclude with, again, I'm really pleased to be part of the session today so that we can come up with some more ways of how we can work together. And I can see a question has just popped up around agreeing social care benchmarks by which all things are measured. So we're already coming through with some questions that together we'll be able to provide some response to. But there are some benchmarks. And we're going to move into some group sessions where we'll be exploring this further. Okay. Over to you.
Thanks, Tricia. Thanks, Clinton. As Tricia says, we're going to go into breakout groups. We're going to split into 2 groups. One will be chaired by Clinton, the other by Tricia. And we're going to be looking at your own personal experience and your views and your ideas about how we might begin to take proactive, intentional steps to make a difference and make some changes and make this shared vision of the future genuinely equal. On the screen, you'll see some questions that we've prepared and we'd like the groups to consider. So bearing in mind Social Care Future's vision statement, what would enable you, from your own perspective, have a good life? What does an equal social care future look like for most disadvantaged, excluded people? And how should leaders be modelling behaviours and values that ensures individualised, personalised support is at the heart of social care for everybody? If we have time in the groups, we also want to think about practical steps that specific people might be able to do to begin to make the changes. So Trisha's asked that we think about what do you think of your director of social care could do to make a difference to how we make a future vision for social care genuinely equal and inclusive? What do you think principal social workers could do to make a difference? And how do you think we might use local counsellors for health and wellbeing and social care? What could they do to make a difference? So I'm going to ask Kira now to break us out into the 2 different groups. That should happen automatically. The time is 12:30, so if we could have 20 minutes of that discussion, and then everybody will come back for 10 minutes at the end.
So there's been a request to put the questions in the chat. Trisha and Trisha, we're in stereo, yes.
Okay, I'll move everyone into the groups now and I'll copy the questions into the chat so that everyone's got those as well.
Can I just ask for Clinton's group, just to feed back a general impression of your conversation and where you think it might point to next? Sorry, Clinton, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, Kira, could you, because I didn't take any notes, I was too involved in the conversation. Kira, are you on?
Really, Clinton, you were involved in the conversation? I'm surprised.
I'm here. Yes, so I've taken some notes. So we talked about what it meant to, what people felt like would enable them to be part of their community, and people felt like having choices about what they wanted to do, being listened to, being heard, and being involved in their community was something really important. We also spoke about how it's important for people to be at the table and not always be on the outside, and to look at like what community means and be able to see each other and be connected, which obviously can be difficult at the moment. And Clinton was sharing with us that this is the same wants and needs of the BAME communities, and that we need to think about things as well to intentionally close the inequality gaps rather than it just be something we talk about doing. There needs to be more actions that actually work to close these gaps, because we can all recognise them, but it's something that needs to be more. We talked about a lot of stuff. I don't know how much time I've got left.
The other element of this our conversation, that inequality doesn't lie in individual choices and individual lifestyle, and you know, we do want people to be more kinder to each other, but to get rid of and chip away at inequality, it's structural. That involves policy, procedures in institutions and organisations. And from my personal view, I think there's 3 ways to narrow the inequality gap, and that's the 3 U's. First, seeing inequality through the lens of intersectionality, because I have multiple identities. As a disabled person, I use mental health issues and, you know, my race. But we keep looking through a binary thinking around identity. So the 3 U's are, we need to understand how existing inequalities, it's about history and not repeating the history. We need to coalesce around a unity to move inequality, to intentionally do something. I've heard some really good leaders talking about it, but we need unity and then the urgency to do it because it's been going on too long. Tricia, over to you.
We had similar conversations, Clinton, very similar. And if anybody from the group wants to share, but I know that Ian was taking notes, but we also talked about a truly personalised approach. So we talked about policy and guidance that's already there. We talked about the real ethos of the Care Act and well-being, and what does personalised approach mean? We talked about co-production, and if we are actually experiencing, or who has actually experienced, real co-production. And I'm really sad to say that we felt real co-production hasn't been happening. We also talked about leadership and the current model of leadership, and that actually leaders, in order to action change, we need to throw away the traditional idea of leadership. We need to relinquish power as social care leaders, and we need to sit down at the table and have the right people around the table, and that's people with lived experience, and a blank piece of paper, and we work together to formulate the plan. But then there was a really good point that people were saying there's a step before that. So it was reimagining co-production. But we talked about, we've been talking and we keep talking, and we need to now do, because there's a lot of talking every year. And how can we just do? Yeah. Is that okay, Ian?
Yeah, that is good. Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. We have 1 minute, so the timing's almost perfect.
Yeah.
Just to say, and I'll see that Martin's made a comment in the chat, how important it is that we continue this discussion.
Yes.
And Martin in their group made the point that Social Care Future Vision, TLAP, Coalition for Personalised Care, DCAN, all these organisations, national voices that really want to make a change and a difference,
Yes.
we also have to look to ourselves, and we need to be the difference, and we need to actually be much more intentionally inclusive as a movement. Sorry, Clinton.
Just a
Very
quick
quickly,
one.
you got 1 minute.
Think Local, Act Personal are trying to. Oh.
Yeah.
Hello.
We can hear you.
We're trying. TLAP is trying to gather stories of where equality and inclusive communities is happening at a local level, so we can do something. So that's what Think Local, Act Personal are doing. It'd be great if we can get some other organisations doing something around that, so we can find out where these glimpses of inclusive communities are, so people can have something to reference to.
And finally, sorry, can I just say finally, I can't help thinking that if all of the organisations, if we all came together collectively, because we are all striving for the same aim, we all want to make the same change, how powerful would that be if us as individuals, we brought that, as somebody in our group said, Becky, I think it was, and Anna talked about bringing your authentic self to the table. And I think we need to be doing that.
Thank you. We have gone 1 minute over. I'm going to have to call it an end there. This isn't the end of the discussion or the conversation. And thank you for joining. And I hope you continue to contribute as we begin to bake some changes and move things forward. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.